They all had to be glued up. and and let me mention something before I tell you about Ken. Boy, Ken, you're getting pushed aside here like crazy. I remember John Slog. As I said earlier, I was going to talk about straightening some things out that were said over the years about how things were done, how they weren't done, who did what, all this other stuff. I don't remember what year it was or what month it was, but several years ago, John Slog, the guy who owns Guitar Villa, I think, in Pennsylvania, fancied himself somewhat of a writer, I guess, and he wrote for Bass Player magazine. I think the section was called The Great Basses. It was a series that he was doing in the back of the Bass Player magazine. You remember that, Brian? No? No. He did a thing on Jocko's bass, the Fender bass that Jocko played, and different people's basses. And of course, he wanted to do one on the Les Claypool bass. Well, John proceeded to tell the world, that I selected all those pieces of wood for their tonal response, and I put them in a certain order so that the tonal response would be, I don't know how he worded it now. I don't have that magazine in front of me, and I'm kind of glad I don't. But anyway, he had told the world, so to speak, that I did this for that reason. And just to clarify that, that's not true. Not at all. Not even close. I put those pieces of wood together like that because I thought it looked nice, and that's all. And that's the end of it right there. That's the only reason I did it. I have no idea about sound or anything else or tonal response of any of those woods. And I'm sure Les didn't care either. It just looked nice, I thought. So that's why I did it. That's where it's at. I remember, too, and I felt kind of bad because I wrote a real nice letter to John Slog, and I sent the same letter to Bass Player magazine, thanking them for putting the picture of the Les Claypool style bass in there. And I appreciated that, but there were some things I wanted to clear up. And I told them just what I told you, and they never even answered me. And they had that section in front of the book, in front of the magazine about corrections and things like that. And I looked for a long time, and I never saw anything where they apologized or. So I feel kind of bad that they didn't do that. But that's the truth. Now it's documented, and I can assure you that's the truth. I did not put those things together for their tonal response. It just looked nice, and that was it. There was a few other things that John did in that article, too. I think he mentioned that I made the first six-string bass in 1976, and it was a 36-inch scale bass. He was wrong on both points there. The first six-string bass I made for Anthony Jackson was in 1974. And it was a 34-inch scale, it wasn't a 36. And I'll talk more about that later, too, because there's a whole bunch of stuff about that bass that was never printed. And I'd like to clear some of those points up, too. Anyway, so there I am in my kitchen with all these blocks of woods and this center block. And I'm going to stick it together and see what happens. And my doorbell rings. So I answer the doorbell, and it's my friend Ken Mackin. He's just on his way home from work. And like I said, he was kind of a corporate kind of a guy. He was really a sweetheart, though. Ken, one of the nicest people you ever want to meet. But he had a suit and tie on. He's always just his little briefcase. He just came on his way home from work. He said he just wanted to stop by and see what I was doing. How you doing, Carl? I said, I'm fine, yeah. He said, well, what's all that? I says, yeah, I'm making this bass for this guy. going to be a rock and roll star, I guess, named Les Claypool. And he says, wow, that looks pretty crazy. I said, well, that's what I thought. But he said, could I help in any way at all? I said, well, if you don't mind, that would be nice. I said, because I'm going to have to glue up a lot of wood here, these little sticks, and they're going to slip and slide around while I'm trying to clamp them together. Maybe we could do it together. He says, yeah, sure. So he went in my bathroom and took his shirt off, took his jacket off and took his tie off and rolled up his sleeves, and he says, I'm ready. What do you want me to do? And he started to glue up wood and help me, and I just wanted to share that story with you. Ken Mackin was very important, you know. There's a lot of people out there who claim a lot of things about what they did and what they didn't do. No one ever mentions Ken Mackin. Well, hey, there it is. And he wasn't a woodworker, and he wasn't the guru who sat on the mountain and said he knew everything. He was just a guy coming home from work and wanted to help me out a little bit. So there you go, Ken. Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, earlier I was talking about the first 6-string bass, and there's been several books and articles in different magazines about the 6-string bass and how it came about, and a lot of the stuff about it is never really brought up, you know. So maybe I should shed some light on that a little bit, so to speak, if you get my drift. Anyway, it is true that Anthony Jackson did conceive the idea. This was his idea. Back then, I was doing a lot of repair work. Anthony was one of my customers. Anthony came in with his Fender bass many times, and he hung out in the shop. Oh, he was there a lot. Like a lot of studio musicians were there in those days. I mean, that shop was really, really, really a hot spot. But you got to remember, back in the 70s, the early 70s, the music business in New York City was a whole different picture than it is now. I mean, like, it was really hopping. Studios were happening all the time. You know, there was a lot of studio work, commercials and film dates and Muzak, all kinds of stuff was going on. Yeah. And Anthony was a part of that. So was my friend Russell George and Bob Cranshaw. And even Ken Smith was doing a lot of that at the time. And Ken was in my shop almost. Those guys practically lived there, you know. And I remember one cute story. Well, this is about Ron Carter. You people out there should know who Ron Carter is, because one of the greatest bass players that ever lived. And Ron didn't play electric bass all that much. But every once in a while he had a couple things where he had to play, and I took care of him too. I would fix his bass up for him. And in my shop, I had a workbench, and I had a little teaching room, and then I had another room where I did a lot of the bigger work. But I had one room where I had like a little couch and a little coffee machine. My record player was there, and sometimes I'd be playing in the city late at night, and I knew I was going to be in the shop the next day early, so I just crash and in my little, I'd right there on the couch and get up and go to work.